Most of the time when military coups happen in a country, you find that the citizens join the international community and regional blocs in condemning the coup, calling for peace and the return of political stability and democratic institutions. However, that is not the case in Niger. If anything, it's actually the opposite. The people are quite excited that the military have seized power from the former president Mohamed Bazoum, and they're hoping that the military can turn things around, that the military can undo the undemocratic and so biased and one-sided relationship that the country has had with France, the business deals that the country has done with France, and the poverty that continues to dog the people because of poor governance. Hey guys, how are you doing? Thank you very much for making time and joining us here today on our conversations. My name is Ondiro Oganga. I am a business journalist by profession, and there's nothing I love more than coming on here and just having a conversation with you guys about Black people, Africa, our empowerment, and how we can rise up and take our rightful place at the global stage. So towards the end of July and even the beginning of August, it's been a very tumultuous time for Niger because the military has seized power and had a successful coup that ousted former President Mohamed Bazoum from power. Now, the people that seized power from President Mohamed Bazoum, or former President Mohamed Bazoum, were the presidential elite guard. And the reason why they're seizing power, they categorically say that they do not like the direction with which Niger is going to. They do not like the governance. They do not like the economic trajectory that the country is taking, and just the general suffering of the people. Now, that is up to the jury to decide because nobody wants to be led by a military government. There's a reason why countries have constitution and democratic bodies, elected bodies in place to lead and govern, because there is a way, there's a format. If you don't like leadership, there's a way to go about it. With the military, it's scorched earth policy. What they say is Bible and it's cast in stone unless you use force to change or to seize power from them, or a lot of international pressure. That notwithstanding, the coup has happened. And what's very interesting about this coup is, unlike all the times when coups happen, we see there's a lot of panic in the country. People start fleeing the country. There's always uncertainty amongst the citizenry. Forget international bodies. The West will always have its own agendas when it comes to Africa or any other developing country, and there's a coup. But in Niger, it's very interesting because the people themselves are out in the streets. They're very happy about the coup. They're supporting the coup. If you watch international cable news, everywhere where they're interviewing the people, they're speaking in support of the coup. And why is this? It's because the people sound like they're fed up. They're fed up of mismanagement of resources. They're fed up of bad leadership. They're fed up of bad governance. And you look at countries like Niger, particularly many countries in the West African region and the Sahel, these are not poor countries. They're very rich in terms of natural resources. Take Niger, for example. It's a country that's very rich in uranium, but the country is poor. It's poor. And it baffles my mind to think, how can a country be very wealthy in terms of natural resources, yet 80% of the people are languishing in poverty? And there's a huge bourgeoisie culture among African politicians where they get in bed with the West and they do scrupulous business that allows them to enrich themselves at the expense of the wider country. And that's what the people of Niger are saying, no more. We support the military coup because at least they've ousted a corrupt government and leadership out of office.
Niger is resilient. We are resilient. If today the national budget has been inflated, tripled, quadrupled quickly, it's because of stealing. What we produce is more than enough for us to survive. So we really call on the armed forces, the security forces, the CNSP, really not to give in to any blackmail.
The people are suffering in this country. Nigerians shouldn't be living like this. The people are coming out to support the coup leaders because they are here to bring balance.
They're really brave, and I support them 100%. We've really suffered a lot. We've suffered a lot because they are our children. A lot of blood has been shed in Niger. We want peace. We want...
France has had a chokehold on Niger and very many other West African countries. And it's not surprising that the people of Niger have noticed this. out in the streets when people were being asked what their thoughts were regarding the coup. They just want French influence out of their country. They don't want anything to do with France in that country. And I'll tell you what, if you're doubting, most recently there was a coup in Mali, and post the coup, they've changed a lot of things. You know, the official language of communication was French. They've changed that, you know, and they've kicked the French military out of that country. There's heavy French presence in West African countries. There was a time I did a video of Dr. Arikana Chihombori just speaking about the chokehold and the influence, the negative influence that France still has on Francophone countries. And she was talking about how post-independence, West African countries, sort of Francophone, that is, sold off their independence to France again because in terms of military activities, France is allowed to have a military base in your country. So in Niger, in Mali, Burkina Faso, there's a French military base. Then you will only get training, military training from France. You will only buy weapons from France, and France has the sovereign power to invade your country if it feels like you are threatening their well-being and their interest in that country. And so the people of Niger are saying, no more, we don't want France in our country.
We also came out to tell this little Macron from France that Niger belongs to us. It's up to us to do what we want with Niger, what we want. We deal with who we want and how we want. We are forming support for the army.
No, people are exhausted when they can outrightly call you by name. And the people of Niger are saying, Macron, we're done. We're done. We can't keep doing business like this. Niger belongs to Nigerians. And you know, that's the thing that most former colonial countries do not get. That post-independence, the country belongs to the people. It's not an extension of your country. Niger is not an extension of France. Mali is not an extension of France. Burkina Faso is not an extension of France. Kenya is not an extension of Britain. Ghana is not an extension of Britain. You know, DRC is not an extension of Belgium and France. These are independent countries. South Africa is not an extension of, you know, Britain. And former colonial powers do not get it. They do not get it at all. They think that they can always find ways of coming back to the continent and exerting their power on African governments and by extension African people, and that's what people are revolting against. People even know about the military activities by France in Niger. You know, African people are not as ignorant and as foolish as the West presumes them to be. Yes, our education system might not be as advanced as yours. Yes, we might have diseases, we might still have civil unrest in some countries, we might still have, you know, hunger, but it doesn't mean that we are daft people. We see things. And some of the people in the streets were talking about how their military bases of France in Niger, and they don't see a need for those military bases. And it's not a lie. Both America and France have over 1,000 soldiers in this country. Why do you need so many soldiers in that country? America built one of the biggest drone bases in Niger, you know, that costed millions and millions and millions of dollars. What kind of interest are you trying to safeguard on the continent, a continent that does not belong to you, a continent whose people have made it very clear that this is our country, this is our home, this is our continent, and we don't want Western meddling? And so the people of Niger are waking up and they're sort of leading the revolution. This is by no means to excuse or condone a coup, but this is to say that the people are beginning to wake up and smell the coffee.
Of Niger, we are against French bases, American bases, Canadian bases, Italian bases, all the bases that are in Niger. We don't need them. Well,
thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think about some of the sentiments that the people from Niger have shared with regards to the coup. I'll see you again next time.